I finally got my head right. I move in silence, you won't catch me in them headlights. And they love to say they love you if they need some. If they see you moving solid and your bread's right. I finally got my head right. I move in silence, you won't catch me in them headlights. And they love to say they love you if they need some. If they see you moving solid and your bread's right. Pick up the county, put it down for the town.
Of course. I mean, I kind of was texting you both. First thing, I mean, most of the people who probably listen to this already know who you guys are. It's usually St. Vincent crowd, but just first kind of who you are, where you from. I know obviously Jose's from Florida. Mark, you're from Maryland, right?
No, I grew up in Miami, dude.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Me like that.
At first,
I've been
I
gone
thought
for
you
too
grew
long.
up in
That's
Florida.
what it is.
Exactly. Anyway, just kind of the first kind of thing I wanted to ask you guys too is, since I was from PA, right down the street, what kind of was like the shell shock or culture shock that you had coming from Miami to St. Vincent?
I mean, I think right off the rip, people are just nicer up here. I don't know what it is about the atmosphere up here, but I mean, everyone from teachers to teammates to, I mean, even my pod mates were all like nice, good dudes, you know? And I don't know if it's because we came from I don't know, Mark, what do you think? It's just, we came from a very,
I don't
area.
I don't think there was much shell shock for Jose and I. I know there wasn't much for me because I grew up in a military.
Shell shock, but just like
it's definitely different. So I grew up in a military family, so I wasn't necessarily born in Miami. I basically grew up there, but I had been in other places before. I had both my sisters were born in Colorado, one brother in Germany, one brother in Georgia. I was born in Massachusetts. My mom's from fucking Spain, so like we're from all over. So there wasn't like I've been in the snow and I've been up north. I would agree with Jose where it's like Western Pennsylvania is different because it's not Northeast, but it's not Midwest. It's kind of the combination. You get like the Northeast directness from people, but they're also that Midwest hospitality. So it's like, I would say overall in Western, like just a wholesome experience, right? Like I never really said hi to people before I moved up to Pennsylvania. Like you don't do that in Miami. You don't say like good morning and how you doing. That was small town vibe. So definitely different. People are nicer. There's clearly not as much to do in Western Pennsylvania, but it challenges you. And again, there's pros and cons to it, right? In Miami, there's always something going on, so you'll never be bored. In Pennsylvania, you got to figure out ways to have fun. You gotta be more proactive, but
you gotta be a little bit more creative. But there's stuff to do. I've acclimated pretty well, I think.
I was gonna say, Jose, you're settling down up there, huh?
Jose sold out on Miami.
Sell out.
I go to this guy's house and I can't even get Cuban coffee.
Switched up on you.
That's not true. There's Cuban coffee here at all times.
So what made you guys choose St. Vincent? I mean, I know football had a lot to do with it, but what made you guys choose St. Vincent?
Mark, you want me to go first?
Yeah, go for it.
So I just had this goal after high school. I wanted to go and just like travel, but just wanted to go away from college, really. I was looking all over the country, like Plymouth State, I think Oberlin, and then something in Illinois. But St. Vincent, credit to their admissions team at the time, they had a really nice, forgot her name, but she was very, involved with Casey, right?
Casey was pretty too.
She was pretty. I hate to say it.
She was pretty too. She had a little brother that was our year. No, she was awesome.
She had a baby brother who was the polar opposite.
Yeah.
He was a cool dude. And but no, maybe it was her like just reaching out to me every week. Like every other school I was talking to, it was their coach contacting me. But she was the only like admissions counselor talking me through the steps, because I mean nobody else in my family's like first generation immigrants, and no one's really been to American college, so I really didn't know what to expect. And Casey was really helpful, and she's, maybe she was pretty. I can't remember, Mark, but
no, she was a pretty woman, but she was like, her personality was awesome.
Yeah, she was exactly what you want in admissions.
Shout out Casey.
Yeah,
no, she was just built different too, right? Like Jose was saying, she genuinely cared about people. You know what I mean? Like she wasn't there just to do a job.
Let me just say, she got a promotion when she left St. Vincent. That's how good she was. And I mean, she's what you expect a admissions counselor to look like and to like sound.
What was her last name? The brother's name?
It'll come to
Conroy.
Conroy. I think she went to NBC, like New York City, and got like a really good gig out there. But
that's cool.
Her uncle's Pat Conroy, who's like a senior admissions counselor at school still, and but she was really cool.
An author.
Yeah. But she was really cool. She sent me t-shirts, St. Vincent. She checked in on me, and I just also St. Vincent pays for your flight, which not many other schools
really.
Yeah, and this was
before your recruiting trip.
Yeah, this was before Latrobe had the airport. So this was like when flights were like close to $400. And
oh my gosh.
As long as you apply and you're, almost in here, they'll pay for your flight. So that was a big plus. I got here, luckily for St. Vincent, it was a nice day because, the weather's not always the best, but
yeah,
it was a sunny April day. And, you've been to Florida, right? Yeah. So it's completely different atmosphere. And I don't know, just at the time it was a new program, Coach Bob, and they really got you excited about being part of, Mark can tell you this, being part of a new team, set records. The Steelers, not that I'm a big Steeler fan at all, but that was kind of cool to look forward to. And I don't know, combination of a lot of good things got me to commit here. But I just knew I wanted to do something different than stay at home,
That's cool.
So, and then Mark naturally followed me. So
Jose's a natural born leader. So no, so I'm the baby of 5. Out of all 5 siblings, only one stayed in Miami. I was forced to leave the state of Florida. My dad's like, if you're gonna go to college, of course you're gonna go to college, but you have to leave Florida. Like that's the rule. So I went to a couple schools. The first night at St. Vincent was ugly. And I had every football player telling me, if you're from Miami, don't come here.
Oh, really?
I had guys I had like Rob Trav, Jarius Marlowe, Candu was one of them. They were all like, if you're from Miami, don't come here. Like, you're just not going to like it. So that whole night, I'm like, I'm not coming here. The next morning, I woke up at like 6 or 7 a.m. to meet with the coaches. And I like walked out of Bonnie. And when you walk out of the side of Bonnie, you like see the mountains.
Yeah.
I saw it and it was beautiful. I was like, I could do that. And then they gave me the tour and everyone was just super friendly. Like I went to an all-boy Catholic high school in Miami. So like I'm walking around. I don't know whether they paid these girls, but these girls were saying hi to me. There was just everyone was super friendly. And like I sat in a class and I saw the benefits of being in like a smaller school. You get more attention in class. So yeah, it just felt right. And I came up with 3 guys from my high school too.
Oh, did who?
So Chris Jacobo, who was actually my roommate, he had to leave after freshman year because his mom had like an accident. And then Jake Keller, who went to my high school as well. You know Jake?
Yeah.
So Jake went there, and then another kid named Brian Santos. He went there for a year and then ended up leaving.
Hey, what happened to Brian?
Brian lives in Maryland now. No, he just I think it was like a grades related thing that he didn't. St. Vincent's not an easy school.
Mark, you went to a private high school, right?
Yeah.
Of those 4 guys, how many of them are on academic probation at St. Vincent College?
How many were? Yeah. How many were on academic probation? All of us.
Oh. Okay.
No, that's funny. So I mean, obviously you guys know I live 15 minutes down the road.
You went to Salem, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You ended up transferring in though.
I did. So I went to a Division II school in West Virginia, in literally the mountains of West Virginia, and I was like, "This is horrible." So I came home, took a year off, and then
it just wasn't for you. Were you on the football team? Like,
yeah. So I stayed the first like semester or whatever, and the Division II football was just like they took it so seriously, and I was never really like about that. I mean, so we did at St. Vincent, but like we didn't
There's
really
a difference. There's a
huge difference.
There's a difference.
Like this is what really did it for me. It was
they were there to win.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Dude, during camp, I had this crazy defensive line coach, and we're all freshmen. And so he goes, all right, every mistake we're watching film, every mistake we're running a 40-yard sprint before a 2-a-day. And I was like, this guy's joking. I was like, there's no way. So he's going through film of a freshman practice. It was only freshman, and literally tallying on the board every mistake. Next morning before a 2-day, we ran 40 yards, like 38 40-yard sprints. And I was like, dude, this is like a couple of weeks later, I don't even know how long it was, probably a month later, I was like, I'm out. And I was like, and I'm not a huge outdoors guy either. So
I remember, high school, the high school I went to, and Jose's going to talk shit, but the high school I went to in Miami was really good at football, like always top 100 of the nation. Super serious, very disciplined. When I got to St. Vincent and I saw and I'm not trying to knock the coaching staff whatsoever, but there was clearly a lack of discipline. Like we barely did any conditioning. There was like no official warm up before weightlifting. Like I got there, I'm like, dude, this is so archaic. Like,
yeah,
no wonder you guys aren't winning games. Like, and I got lazier in college because there wasn't someone on top of you telling you to, hey, we're running 110-yard sprints. We're doing this. We're doing that. You're going to do a legitimate, dynamic warm up before your weightlifting session. And after you're done weightlifting, you're going to do abs, high intensity training, and then you're going to do a cool down. Like we didn't do any of that at St. Vincent.
Yeah.
So it was almost, I would say a lot of the Florida guys walked in with a chip on their shoulder, and it was like not hard to respect the program, but it was like, come on, guys.
Yeah. No, I agree. It was, and I wasn't even there when you guys had Colbert and all them, which is actually funny because I almost went there out of high school. And the only reason I didn't, because my dad was like, you're not going right down the street. And I was like, because Bob, he was the only head coach that came to recruit me. And he was texting me. And so I was like, shit, I'll go there.
I think Bob was a good recruiter. His son Brett recruited us.
Yeah.
Well, because Bob's like people want to talk shit about, like, I have my things to say about Bob, but Bob genuinely is like a good human being.
Yeah, like he's a good coach. Like,
yeah,
I can't say a lot about some St. Vincent coaches, but I mean, if you ever run into Bob, Mark, you know this too. He talked to you for about an hour. He catch up with you and really genuinely care about how you're doing, and
that's cool.
I've always gotten that vibe from him.
Good person. I think towards the end of his career just kind of fell off. I mean, he's older. It's hard to keep up with that same intensity.
Yeah, he did win Coach of the Year once in the pack. So
that's also because we were stacked and we had a bunch of Division I talent on our team.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Darius McGee, our offensive line was huge. You had Darius McGee. You had Feek. Feek was a freak of nature. You had Aaron Spantanka, Huey, Ricky Douglas, all these cats. Sheldon.
You had Womp.
Solid.
Why do you have to throw? Nick, it's been maybe 10 minutes into this thing, and Jose's thrown shade to like 5 or 6 different things. I don't know if you picked up.
I'm just giving shout outs.
It's such a troll.
No, that's not true.
Well, anyway, I mean, we could sit here and talk St. Vincent all day, but big thing I want to talk to you guys about. So, I'm obviously, actually, Mark, I don't know if I'm friends with you on Facebook, but for some reason, probably Emily or someone shows me your Facebook post. Jose, I see yours all the time. So the big thing I want to talk about.
Let's get down to the nitty gritty.
Let's get down to it. Obviously, I'm really genuinely interested in I'm not going to say I'm a political guy. I'm not at all.
Neither
and I don't think any of us really are.
But we have opinions.
Exactly. We have our opinions. We know what's real, what's not. So I'm genuinely interested as to where your guys' opinions are. So first kind of thing I want to go with is, did we think Trump was a good president? His 4 years, policies, whatever. Whatever you want to put in there.
I'll take the first one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So this idea that you can judge someone's like presidency right after is it's just not a real thing. Like, I didn't vote for Obama, But like as soon as he got elected, I was like, all right, let's see what he does. And again, I feel like because each policy takes time. So I sell to the government everything that the government is like a super slow moving entity. So like whenever you put a policy in place, it takes time. You've got to give it a chance. And to be honest, you almost can't judge presidents their presidency anymore, because as soon as someone new gets elected, they take their policies out. So was Trump a good president? That I think is an opinion. I like some of the things he was doing. I didn't like some of the things he was doing. So whether he was good or not, that's up to that's an opinion at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Barbershop.
You got to give it time. If you allow his policies to play out and see what they do, then I think you can make a judgment whether he was a good president or not. But I don't think you ever will.
Jose, what do you think?
So first thing I want to address is I can't believe you don't follow Mark Cowan on Facebook, because I thought
I did, but I went to message him and I was like, why are we
I just want you to know Mark's one of the most interesting people on social media.
Well, I saw him and Ray going at it a few times.
I was hanging out with Ray last night.
That's just the tip of the iceberg of how Mark initiated conversation. And it's not like, and it's, it's very critical and very, it's a little intense sometimes, but it's always with peace and love, and it's with people you probably recognize. So I'm always, sure. I know there's a small group of people out there who follow up on his conversations, on his comments. So yeah, do that when you get a chance. Right here, right now, I will announce my party. I'm pretty moderate when it comes to just everything. And like Mark was saying, I mean, you could, there's a lot of pros and cons that come with the word Trump, but like, no matter what, Bush, Obama, that's our pilot of our, the plan we're on. And I'm always going to cheer for our president because I love this country. But that being said, like, I think on paper, Trump did a lot of good stuff, with taxes and just, really looking out for American businesses. But then his other half, which you could say is his ego, just the way he kind of portrayed himself on social media towards the end, really rubbed me the wrong way. That's because I work in education and I do a lot of, behavioral issues, and just seeing the way that guy was acting and then how my students were acting sometimes, I'm like, man, how am I supposed to tell him to like not behave that way when the leader of the free world's throwing a little tantrum on Twitter, So, I mean, that's just the way I saw it. I also think that may have cost him the election, because on paper, you can make an argument that he did a lot of good stuff, but just how he was in love with the media.
Yeah.
His ego. Politics nowadays.
What's up?
I was going to say politics nowadays. Now it's not even about arguing policies and what's going to work and what's not going to work. I don't know if anyone's ever studied PR and advertising, but it's like, who has the best PR team and who can slander the other person the worst? Because whoever does that's going to win. That's what it's turned into. It's not about policies anymore. It's like a
celebrity show.
And people think that people think that I'm a Trump supporter. No, not by any means. Like, to me, when someone says that, oh, you're a Trump supporter, you're out here like repping Trump, you're saying he's the man. I'm not a Trump supporter by any means. I did vote for the guy, but the second he got elected, they were trying to impeach him the entire time. So instead of being like, okay, you're president, let's see if we can help each other out. Instead, they're spinning their wheels, wasting time and money and taxpayer dollars on trying to impeach this guy off of some foo-foo shit that like may or may not have even happened. So that happens from the get-go. And then, we can touch on all this other propaganda that came out, right? The police brutality, the systemic racism and the white privilege and all this other stuff that's been coming out, and Donald Trump's a racist and he's neo-Nazi and he's fascist. All
Jesus,
that
Mark,
is
one topic at a time.
all that shit is just propaganda, right? Like, none of it's actually really true.
Yeah, but that's always been around. Like, I mean, I could sit here and tell you like 10 different stories.
Yeah, but it's magnified. It's magnified because there's so many different avenues of media, right? There's social media. There's
and it's just gonna get worse. Like
it's the misinformation age.
Since the election. I haven't been following politics as much because I've promised myself like I want a mental break this New Year's.
Yeah.
But man,
So,
I'm hearing a lot of Biden, what he's doing, and I'm just annoyed by it because it's like all I hear is all the bad stuff he's doing, which is fine because he needs, you need both sides need critique so they're in check.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
it's just it just seems like what's up?
You need positivity and criticism.
Yeah, no, and I think that's what the founders were planning when they created the system. But it's just with media in our hands, it just feels like every little thing is criticized, and I think it was intended to just maybe sit back and let our elected officials battle it out, a little bit more, because not everything Trump said was it shouldn't have been taken seriously, and I think maybe it was his fault that he had no filter.
Nick,
but
Nick, what's your opinion?
Well, I mean, to be honest, like I said, I'm definitely not in any way. I to be honest, I hated Donald Trump, and the one reason why, and it's kind of what Jose was saying, was when I look at politics in general, I really just look at what are some important policies or things to me, and not even like you said, Mark, when you look at policies, it's Republican, Democrat, it's going to take time to get through and get past and be in effect. And so that's why I put a lot of stock into how you conduct yourself, because to me, like, I did this example because I'm a teacher, was I said, okay, so let's say hypothetically, I'm the world's best teacher. I'm going to make your child read better. I'm going to make your child do math better. I'm going to make them do science better. They're going to go on and do great things. But I cuss at them. I swear at them. I do this. I do that. I'm like a
you're
mean
not a good
person.
example.
Yeah. So like, I think about it as like, would you want your child in my class? And it's just like, probably not, because of that. So like, for me, it's like, I put a lot of stock into that, because bottom line, the way our government, to me, on the outside is set up to limit the effectiveness of a president. You know what I mean? Like Congress, House of Representatives, you've got all these different branches where it's like I
wouldn't say it was designed. It wasn't designed to limit the effectiveness, but it's turned into that. It wasn't originally designed to do that.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I mean,
it's
yeah, that's
morphed
true. I mean,
into this system where it's like checks and balances, but for you to get anything done, there's like a lot of things that are, a lot of money, getting a lot of favors being done.
No, that's a big thing.
It didn't use.
Let me ask you guys
way.
this: do you think Trump personally wanted those checks and balances in place? Because from my point of view, he didn't. He wanted it his way and his policies to go through and this and that, instead of
well, every president wants their policies to go through, but the thing is, Donald Trump is just more like abrasive than everyone else. So it comes off like he's shoving things down their throat. Like, I don't, again, I'm not a political guy, so I don't know all these policies, but there were certain things that I liked what he was doing. Is like, one of the biggest things is he was trying to get away from China. He was trying to get away from dealing with China. He was trying to get away from buying things that we need to rely on from China and instead bring it in-house. I like the fact that he was bringing oil back to the United. Well, not that bringing back oil to the United States.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Drilling here. Like, if I'm going to drill oil, let me do it here. Why waste all this money on sailing out somewhere to get oil and then pay money to bring it back? The whole oil thing is just shifting liability, by the way. That's just the government being like, hey, it's not the United States contributing to global warming. It's everyone else.
That's true. But do you also think too that because if you think about it that way, because the United States is kind of looked at as like the biggest power of the world in that sense,
the big brother,
the big brother. So now, us shipping or ordering, quote unquote, from another country, we're kind of pushing the economy and money out that way. I guess,
right? You're like, oh, well, we're trying to set a good example, but we're still really contributing. No,
yeah.
Excuse my language, but fuck the perception of what people think of the United States. You know what I mean? Like, drill oil here, and while you're drilling oil here and keeping the cost of oil down and keeping Americans happy, by the way, the amount of oil you burn to go get the oil outweighs whatever you're trying to do. So again, let's think logically here. Drill oil here. While you're drilling oil here, you start to explore other avenues when it comes to energy. Again, big Elon fan. I love Tesla. I worked for them for 2.5 years. I'm all about electric cars. I think there's always going to be somewhat of a need for fossil fuels when it comes to certain things.
Sure.
But we can definitely bring like that footprint down. But to do this thing where we stop. How many jobs did getting rid of the pipeline? How many jobs did that get rid of?
10,000.
That's a lot.
I think it was more than that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
And
so
and
it's
right
like,
now, I mean, what's going on in Texas seems like
that's like a lack of
correlation,
preparation.
but
that's just bad luck.
It's bad luck, but it's lack of preparation from the government and the people that live there. Like the issue is no one winterized anything. It's like people's pipes are bursting. There's no electricity. The infrastructure wasn't ready for that. But then you got Ted Cruz jumping on an airplane and going to Mexico.
Did you see that?
What?
He got ripped.
All right. So speaking of,
he blamed it on his daughters too.
What a pussy.
Hey, watch your mouth, man. There's kids watching this.
Good.
Fucking dickhead. All right. Listen. So my biggest problem with so when Trump was running, his whole thing was what? Drain the swamp.
Yeah.
Like I truly thought he was gonna be like the next great maverick. Like you can't tell me nothing, because deep down he's like both sides. The man has a history of being like pro-choice. Like he was a Democrat his whole life. Like he gets it. But I mean, I thought he was gonna be that guy who just kind of said, "I don't care what team you're on. We're gonna work together for the best possible solution." You know, the greater, the best solution for the greater good. I thought this was gonna be like something awesome. And then like he went on to win, and he befriended Ted Cruz after making fun of his wife, Marco Rubio.
Dude, he made fun of everyone.
He made fun of everyone. Giuliani became his lawyer. Like what type of wild card move was that? Like you just saw a bunch of guys. You just saw how politics in this country works. So that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I wish Trump just kept going, but went back to that. And that's what kind of rubbed me the wrong way off the bat. But
one thing that I would say, hold on, Mark. The one thing that I don't want to credit him, but with that kind of attitude that he had, like you said, it kind of highlighted it a lot more. So like and what I mean by that is we all kind of saw like Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever you want to say, Pelosi, Schumer, Trump, whatever it is, it's all kind of this. Trump kind of helped us see that, I feel like, a little bit more. Like highlight it. I
step back and both sides are just so extreme right now. And I don't think this next election Biden has a shot. I think there's either going to be like a new party.
He's alive.
Yeah, exactly. I think the Republican Party is going to break off into more of a moderate new front, because it's just crazy that you have to pick either extreme. Like it rubs me the wrong way. So like I work with mostly rural students, and during the election, Nick, you can imagine what side of the debate they were mostly on every day.
Sure.
So I would just call them out and be like, "Why are you a Trump fan? Why are you a Biden fan?" And it was always like a far like point that they made. It was just like it didn't make sense to me. So finally, I looked online for like 100-question political party questionnaire. 90% of these kids were down the freaking middle with what political party. They were like, "What's a Green Party? What's the Libertarian Party?" And I'm like, "Oh, let's look at it." And they were like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." I'm like, "Yeah, that makes a lot of sense." And we went over like gun control. They thought they actually meant like come and take my guns. I'm like, that'll never happen. Like you're misinterpreting what's going on. So like we did a lot of just civics class in my class, and it's not even a history class, but like it just showed me like what their parents at home were like listening and talking about. Yeah. Like it's just like a lack of knowledge about how government works. And I think that's just the whole like demagogue, like fear mongering aspect of both sides right now. Like both sides are just trying to grab whatever they can to fuel their side of the argument. And it just, I don't know, maybe that's why I've stepped away from, that's why I only get my news from Mark Cal on Facebook, because it's important for Mark Cal, and I'll get a text message like, "Hey, did you see my argument?" I go, "No, not yet." And I know it's something that's going on, because other than that, I'm just like, CNN and Fox, it's just like
one way or the other.
It just seems like crap to me, man. It seems so toxic to me. It makes me nauseous when I turn on those channels and I'm sitting there trying to make a.
Well, so you should be. Like, you should. So I grew up. My dad's like a Republican. My dad's like a super old school guy. Like, never met a better guy than my dad. Right? Like Catholic.
Except Elon Musk.
Yeah. But my dad's just genuinely like a really good dude, really big heart, very opinionated, and you know he's very direct. But if you're gonna have an opinion, just back it up. So I kind of forgot where I was going with that. What were you talking about, Jose?
I mean, there's plenty. Like my wife's dad is a conservative, great guy, and even he sat there right before the election and told me, Mark, that Trump's costing himself the election.
Yeah,
because he knew like what is he doing with this Twitter and stuff. But I'm not saying either. I know great people on both sides, and it just scares me that some of these guys, that the news can get away without being checked.
I knew where I was going.
I know they're not what? They're not journalists. Like, what's their excuse?
Yeah. I don't know, but so
they can't get sued because they're not labeled as the news. They're just a journalist. Is that what it is?
Yeah,
something like that.
So my dad raised me to watch as many different news media outlets as possible, so that you can kind of formulate your own opinions. I grew up listening to NPR every day on my way to school. We watch Fox, CNN, you name it. Now, yeah, my dad leans right because that just kind of lines up with his thoughts and beliefs. But I think that's the way to go, right? Like people, and I'm guilty of it too. Like if I see a headline, sometimes I won't even read the article. I'll just go off of emotion, right? And I'll say something. Read the whole article, do a little bit of background. You almost have, there's so much information, you now have to do more work to dig up what the actual truth is. And people are so lazy because everything now in today's day is like, hey, let's have it now. Let's have it now. No one's actually doing their due diligence and talking about what's actually true. And I'm guilty of that too. I do that sometimes, no doubt. It's like the easy way out, but.
Well, speaking of truth, what did you guys think about the election? I mean, you saw Trump and Giuliani.
Every election is somewhat rigged, right? I truly believe that. But there was a lot of fishiness around this one.
What do you mean rigged?
There's always some type of like skewing of the numbers, right? Like whenever you have mail-in ballots, those are hard to trust. Do you remember that election with Al Gore and Bush?
These election the election process for each state is selected by each state's legislation, and they approve it. And don't you worry, both sides of each party have representatives there that have been kind of like deputized in a way, and they're supposed to be at each poll station and make sure there's no cheating going on. Now, as far as the mail-in voting, it was approved. And is it perfect? Hell no. Because like I was bugged. I got 3 phone calls like months before the election asking me, would you like a mail-in ballot? Mail-in ballot. I'm like, no, I'm gonna walk there. I'm good. Thank you.
I don't know how rigged it was, right? Like I had no problem with Trump saying we're gonna investigate this. I think there's fish. I had no problem with that. I had a problem with the way he was carrying himself during that process. Like, I'm not gonna concede. He was like kicking and screaming. Like, no, look, here's the deal. You're the president. If you feel like there's some fishiness going on, by all means do the investigative work. But at the end of the day, if they don't find anything, you lost, dude. At the end of the day, you lost. Anything. And you know what? Like
I don't know if like it was Giuliani and that other lady. I don't know if they're at their end of their careers or promised some money. But you were having them going up like 3 nights after the election saying the Kraken will be released. There's enough evidence. And I'm listening to like,
where's the evidence? I was excited.
Yeah, me too. I was like, oh, this is going to be cool. And then like it dragged on. I was listening to Shapiro, who's like pretty moderate right-wing radio host. And he was like, this is ridiculous. Like, if they have proof, this should have been released yesterday. Like, the more you wait, the more suspicious it gets. And I think
it's hard to prove a lot of it because I'm sure some of it was covered up, right? Like, there were literally votes coming in for people that were dead.
Yeah, but like they were finding it on like most sides have, and like each election.
Sure, and that's when I said there's always some like type of
every election.
There's
thousands
always some
of votes.
question mark.
there's always thousands of votes that are like incorrect, but never enough to sway an election a certain way. So when you look at the numbers, this dude lost by like 7 million people. Like,
and you're innocent until proven guilty. So like,
exactly.
So was
like,
the election rigged? Did he win? No. So I think the truth about the election? I think I think the numbers were skewed. It could have been either way, right? Like the Democrats could have done it, the Republicans could have done it a little bit. There needs to be better checks and balances when it comes to voting, especially when it comes to mail-in ballots. But this idea that there's a lot of things that happen that are fishy. Like the fact that the left was pushing for mail-in ballots months before, that throws me off a little bit. But again, there's no proof.
How come though?
You don't find that fishy in any way, shape, or form?
Well, I'll say two things. One, I do think it was the political move,
especially before they had any debates. They were asking for them to send them. You shouldn't be able
to do it months at a time, Mark.
What, a mail-in ballot?
Yeah, it's weird. Like I got my.
That's
call.
what I'm saying. Like I don't like that. But
these rules were established a year or two before the election. Like this is how mail-in ballots are gonna happen. This isn't something they discussed like months before the election.
Let me ask you guys this, since you both are Miami guys, and I don't know, I mean, you were barely 18, still living in Miami, but what was voting like down in Miami? Like, was it a local church? Was it a mess? Was it, yeah?
So I'll take the lead on this one, Markeisha. So it's just like it is up here, but as you can imagine, it's a total shit show. Like it's a library, it's public schools, there's lines. Honestly, voting up here has been like sweet. There's no lines, everyone's nice. I feel like in Miami,
you're the little old lady. She's
in Miami, dude, you're being mean mugged, and you better know like 3 different languages.
You got the.
You don't know if you're gonna get. You don't know if you're gonna have to speak Spanish, Creole, or English. Like when you get to that line, so you better figure it out. That being said, like politics in a quick sum, it just seems like most Hispanics vote Democrat. Now, as far as Cubans, they mostly vote Republican. That's why it's just, you can kind of trace it back to the whole communist PTSD, or that's still going on. So you always see that. Now, this past election, they made the argument that Trump got more Hispanic votes than any other Republican has. That is true because you may not believe this, but Cubans do repopulate and populations are going to go up. So every election, no matter what demographic it is, they're going to have more votes either way they vote. So I think next election, whichever party makes a grab for that, it'll probably be good. I mean, I'm Hispanic, but I believe in immigration rules. I'm not saying let's open up our borders. Like, so there is potential room there to make that grab. And like I said, I think if you look at the senator elections, it shows that it wasn't that people like the Republicans didn't just lose the Senate by a lot. It was like close because numbers show that people weren't crazy about Biden. Like I talked to a lot of coworkers in education. They voted for their representatives in state to be Republican, but they're just annoyed by Trump. Like I feel like a lot of people just voted in spite of Trump. Just like the previous election, I think a lot of people I worked with were pissed off about Hillary being their candidate. So I think it's now turning to who's the most. It's not who's the best least choice. It's like who's less crazy. That's what it's turning into. And they went with Grandpa Joe. So that's where we're at right now.
I was gonna say pick the lesser of the evils, right? But you brought up immigration. There's like this idea that like Republicans are against immigration. Look, I'm Republican. My mother's from Spain. My dad's half Cuban, half Polish. His father was a political refugee. Like, I'm all about immigration, but at this point in today's day, we need to do it the right way.
Yeah, it has to be regulated. Like my parents both are immigrants, but they did the legal way. Like they came over with a working visa.
You just have an influx of immigrants. It's gonna fuck things up a little bit, right? It's gonna fuck up the infrastructure.
Absolutely.
Like where do we put these people? What if we don't have the food and the water? What if we don't have schools? Again, it's got to be controlled. We got to be able to
I'll tell you guys a quick little story. So my uncle, he works for customs, and he's, he runs this big training facility down in Georgia on St. Simon's Island. And I asked him that same question. He said, on the Mexican border, you have caravans of people 24/7, 7 days a week.
It's
of
nonstop.
People and he said it's literally, and he was a huge Trump guy, and he leans way right. But the question that I think about when like policy terms, and Jose, you may be able to answer this too, or Mark, I'm curious as to, and I don't know what the process really is to become, an actual part of like a U.S. citizen. Like, what is?
I have no idea. From a Mexican perspective, I have no idea. In Cuba, it's wet foot, dry foot,
which is bullshit. But we can talk about that another day.
So
I watch a lot of 90 Day Fiance with my wife, so I know a thing or two about the immigration rules. And basically, if you're not marrying somebody here, then you have to apply, and usually it's through a working visa. Each year, like I forget who's in charge of immigration in this country, but they have like a set number of immigrants they allow in, and obviously they consider whether you're coming from like war-torn country. Is there some type of breakout that they need to rescue people, or you're just applying for asylum to a better future?
Yeah. I'm gonna be honest though, if I'm border patrol and I'm hanging out and I see like a giant Mexican family, I might turn my head and let.
Yeah, dude, it's a lot of that ethical versus legal
policy
dilemma in your life that you gotta face.
Might turn my head because there's a reason these people are fleeing that country.
Well, see, right. What my uncle told me too, though, is there's a big, and I know I would, but he said they use kids for smuggling drugs.
It's bad.
They use kids for, there's a lot of sex trafficking.
What's the cartel? What's the cartel called in Mexico? The FARC or something? No, that's Colombia, right?
No, they've got names, but just the cartel. They, that's the problem, and that's exactly what the problem is, Mark. They pay these families who don't have shit. Like, hey, you want to go to America? That's fine. Here's an extra $5,000. Just take this bag for me. So that is the problem. Like, I feel for those families, and people are allowed to come in this country on working visas, but they have to follow through with inspection and all these other things. So
that's just that's just
and don't worry, most of those people working those gates are Mexican like descendants. Like, I've watched videos of like who's in charge of like at the gates of Tijuana. It's like Spanish guys, so they know the deal. They're not dicks.
Yeah, bro. That's because that at one point that was home.
But hey, Nick, what subject do you teach?
2nd grade. I teach them all.
Oh, okay. Well, when you get bored in class, look up the whole wet foot thing for Cubans.
I definitely.
Yeah, why is that bullshit?
I just think it's a little outdated, Mark. Because this is back in the time.
I think so too.
Whoa, hey.
Wait, hold on. What? I don't even know what it is. So enlighten me a little bit.
So basically,
dry foot, it's the idea that if you're a Cuban political refugee and you are on a raft or whatever, the second you step on dry land, they cannot send you back. Wet foot, dry foot.
That's it. It ends right there. All right, Nick. Now let me ask you a question. You remember Vietnam, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't
there, but
he was there, dude.
You were there, right? You were about. You had hair back then, right? That's
barely
a different time. So let me tell you this. Are you there? Sorry. The whole reason we got involved with that, the Cold War. This is a time in our country where we thought communism was a disease, right? Not only were they,
not really though. We didn't think it was a disease.
No, it was a nuclear race, whatever. But just the fact that we were throwing innocent lives to like contain them with North Korea, North Vietnam, all this crazy shit. And unfortunately, Castro was siding with the enemy at the time. I understand that. But we looked at, all right, if you want to leave Cuba, you become a citizen if you land here, which is great. I understand that. I would never knock a Cuban. I know like Laz, his parents, I know a bunch of good friends who have Cuban grandparents who went through that. And that's awesome.
My grandfather.
Story. Yeah. But my point is, look at Venezuela, same shit. They had a bit of a dictator over there. How come those people weren't granted, citizenship here in the United States? Like you see if you look at a fucking list of the corruption in South America, it is even in Argentina, you've had like dictator, like fascists.
Venezuela, Colombia, Argentina, Brazil.
People, I mean, look at the 90s. Look at Cocaine Cowboys, like Colombia in the 90s.
Yeah.
That's the biggest reason why my dad immigrated.
Well, listen to this. So my uncle was in the army. He married my mom's sister, and obviously my mom's from Spain, so she's 100% Spaniard. He was hired basically by his job was to be like an ambassador essentially. So he was a U.S. soldier that lived in Argentina, and he also lived in Venezuela. And he used to tell me stories. He's like, you have to keep cash underneath your car seat because when you get pulled over, these cops, people want to complain about police brutality here. These people can shoot you, they can kill you,
they can
do whatever
cops.
they want.
It was the army walking around.
Yeah, they can do whatever they want to you. And unless you don't have cash, you could go to jail, you could die. I mean, that is crazy. That is corruption.
And Nick, just look at it like, and don't get me wrong, when I got out of school when I was at middle school, Mark, and I turn on the TV and it's like, in California they have the helicopter on a bank heist. In Miami, dude, you turn on the news, you see these 5 little Cubans on a raft trying to get through like these boats, and everyone's just cheering them on.
Cubans,
sometimes they make it. It's great. Cuban engineering.
Cubans are crazy. Oh, dude, they'll turn a
the
truck
rafts
into
they
a
would
boat.
make.
That's crazy.
Yes, and they would have 100 people on it. Swear to God,
NASA
and it was crazy. And
you
couldn't help but like cheer them on. But now as I'm older, and I've studied like what's going on in other countries, like the crazy Central American civil wars. Like why weren't they granted the same type of rules? And times have changed. I get that, but I don't know. It just seems kind of
So
biased,
is that you said that's still that
Wefo Dreffo's a real
is still.
Oh yeah. And now I mean relationships have gotten better. Like I know a lot of friends who have traveled back to Cuba to visit family, and they're descendants of immigrants that have left.
Yeah.
Because once you leave, you can't come back, because most of the time you're considered an enemy of the state. It's really old fashioned, like Cold War shit over there. I mean,
oh wow.
But like things are getting better. Like there's not much of that. Like I've seen a lot of like Gordon Ramsay. I've seen a lot of like celebrities go over there for shows.
Yeah.
It's not like people like, oh, screw America. It's not like that at all.
Do you remember the picture from Miami?
Who?
The picture from the Miami Marlins, Jose Fernandez.
Yeah, I mean that
guy came on a raft.
No, not even that.
Came on a raft.
Yeah, the Cuban.
Not only that, so
the Cuban baseball team, national team, travels a lot, and as you can imagine, they've got fucking athletes, right? And every once in a while, you hear a crazy story that they're at a hotel and one of the players just runs for it. And obviously, like his family gets in trouble back home, but he realizes, like, hey, I'm in Puerto Rico, I'm out. And you hear this,
they send money back to their family.
Yeah. But it's just an outdated rule, man. And I'm on the same thing. Like Joe Rogan's talked about it before. It's silly as fuck that we need a piece of paper to walk around this world and show where we're from and why we should be allowed to live here, But I get it. But like, I mean, that being said, like, I think it's case by case, and there should be immigration rules, because my dad's pretty conservative, believe it or not, about everything. So it's not just like a black and white thing for Hispanics. Like we there's a lot of discretion with how we see things, and I think the Democratic Party is gonna get fucked in the butt later when they keep taking for granted that Hispanics are gonna vote for the left every time, because that's not the case.
Hispanics will change their mind.
Yeah, bro, especially Hispanic women. Don't you fucking piss her off, dog. You won't know you don't know which way she's gonna vote. You don't know shit. She'll vote against you just to piss you off.
Yeah.
Some crazy shit. But that's something that and like I think this past election we saw the whole like Black Lives Matter thing come up all of a sudden, because I think maybe either side was just trying to make a grab for it, because we'll truly see if this administration wants to
make an
promise all those things, because you're right. We have and Mark, you can relate to this documentary you're watching, this whole incarceration rate thing.
The 13th, is there talking about that one?
It's sickening how this private industry is really taking over. Go ahead,
we can talk about that. So when it came to like the whole police brutality thing, anytime that there's a question of whether there's police brutality or not, that has to be looked at as a singular case. As a singular, like, just like you can't make these generalization, all cops are bad, we need police reform. Because I guarantee you, that if I were to break down the numbers and let's say, throw out a number, let's say there's like 100,000 different types of cases around the country. If there's 4 or 5 violent ones out of those 100,000, guys, not that I don't have a heart, but those are pretty good fucking numbers.
Yeah.
Like
the only thing
I have a brother that's I have a brother.
I was
gonna
say, don't you have family that are police officers?
I have a brother that's a cop, and then the rest of my I have a bunch of military in my family.
Yeah.
But my brother's a good ass cop too. Like,
yeah, good dude.
Trust me, I've run into personally some asshole cops, and I'm I get it. So there's good cops, there's bad cops, but again, the whole police brutality thing was blown out of proportion because there was media constantly on it, magnifying it. So that's the only thing you're seeing. That's the only thing you're talking about. That's the only topic. So like
I don't even call it an argument, but the thing that I would say isn't that we were all too young, but isn't that pretty much the same thing that happened with vice versa with Black communities and even Hispanic communities, where it was high crime rate, Black on Black crime, and
that shit was real. That was real. Because cops were way more. Yeah, but like not as bad as what people are making it out to be. Not as bad as the media is making it out to be.
What it is that you see more Black on Black, brown on brown.
That's another thing. Yeah, people want to talk about
crime. Then you do see this interracial war that the media is trying to make it out to be.
Yeah, if you break down the numbers.
And you know what, Nick, I was telling Mark this the other day because I heard in class that Black officers, Black judges, Hispanic judges, Hispanic police officers, they're tougher on their own race statistically than a white cop or white judge. And it's true. I tell Mark all the time, whenever if there's like a mass shooting or some type of really inappropriate sex ring that gets, you almost oh, thank God it's not a Spanish guy, because it makes us look bad, So
I guess that's my point. So like what Mark is saying is when one cop does something, there's this complaint that it makes every cop look bad, because it has been. But like you just said, that's also kind of been what happened with
generalizations are so dangerous, so fucking dangerous. That's
it's there's millions, not millions, but there's hundreds of doctors every year that lose their licenses for malpractice. Lawyers aren't, they lose, the bar comes down on them and takes their license away. It happens in almost every professional field, because a police officer is a professional. Judges lose their powers sometimes. It happens. And I don't know whether it was a political move to just cause so much, emotion built up, because it's crazy that I got students saying F the police, and I'm like, why? And then I go over hundreds of examples on what are you going to do when the cops turn around? Oh, well, just defend myself.
Well, again, you can't hold one person responsible for the entire police force.
So I spend a lot of time in class. What are you guys going to do when you get pulled over? Oh, I'm going to be a dick. Why? Be super polite to that officer, because most of the time they're just doing their job. You might have just ran stuff. Who cares?
So a lot of these cases that were publicized, and I can't remember all the names. I don't remember every single story, but it would come out, and then the more we found out, it was either, hey, the cops really fucked up, or guys, this guy had a criminal record. He was drunk, or he was violent. You have to wait until all the details come out before you jump to these conclusions that police brutality, systemic oppression. The system is rigged because they don't like Black people and they're trying to oppress Black people. That's bullshit. That's complete and utter bullshit. Yeah. That's systemic racism. I watched that documentary, The 13th, the other day. My boy Dwayne Brown told me to watch it, and I did, and it was really interesting.
Is Dwayne Brown a Black person?
Yes.
I think that adds to their story. All right, continue.
So no, that's one of my best friends. Yeah. And I kind of want to watch that documentary again to kind of pick apart that I think the things are true and the things that I would question. A lot of that plays on emotion. I don't know how much if systemic oppression was systemic oppression is the idea that the system is in place to keep Black people oppressed, essentially, correct? Based off of skin color. Essentially, right? I don't know if that's exact. I'm sorry if I misconstrued that in any way. There are too many successful Black people in the world for systemic oppression to be a real thing. There's also too many broke ass white people and too many white people in jail also for systemic oppression to be a real thing. Because if it was designed to keep one race down and one race up, you're telling me there's that many people that make it through the cracks?
But I was just gonna say, so based on that documentary, I've watched it too. Based on the numbers, why? Like, I guess my question is, why don't you see, like, why are the numbers so misconstrued as to the percentages of Black Americans in prison, as far as percentages, not numbers, because obviously the white population outnumbers it, but percentages is much higher.
Yeah. So that's like a multi-answered question. So
yeah, I think there's different tiers because
I think that Black people at one point were targeted? Absolutely. Right? When it came to drugs, they were targeted. But at the end of the day, if you get caught with drugs, I mean, you're kind of doing something illegal. And a lot of Black people, I can't make this, I don't want, again, I'm not racist, I'm not making these, but Black people felt that they had to resort to crime to make money, right? Like, that's kind of like the excuse. So if you get caught with drugs, you're going to jail. Now, the question was, it's like, well, Black people are being, punished for, they're getting, their sentences are worse. That's not really happening nowadays. I'm talking about nowadays. Like, a lot of, like, when I watched the 13 and it was talking about segregation and Jim Crow, that was, to me, that a lot of that was real. But nowadays,
a lot of
I'm sorry,
all of it was real.
What do you mean?
Yeah, Mark, what wasn't real?
It was all real. Sorry, it was all real. Like, the police,
I know what you mean, though, but like,
the
think about like this,
incarceration.
right? But think about like this. Like, I'm just gonna shoot out. I mean, there's hundreds of different examples, but one simple one is the policy of redlining, where specifically policies were put into place to move African Americans out of neighborhoods and move the white flight. Because what happens is think about, like, even like in Miami or Latrobe.
Was that to move Black people, or was that to gentrify the area and essentially just make it a better neighborhood, regardless of whether you're white or Black in that neighborhood? Was it strictly to move Black people or just poverty?
Well, but think about that though. Who ultimately, based on the history of that, where Black people coming back from World War II weren't getting the equal amount of what's the bill, the check, that whatever,
the GI Bill.
African American men were not getting equally amount. So you're talking within 15 years of one another. So now you're gentrifying by, like you said, you're right, you're trying to rid that out, but a higher
But let me ask you a question.
White Americans are buying these nicer houses, and now you're moving.
But so is it a question of racism or just economic inequality? Is it just economics? Because if a Black guy's got money and wants to go buy a super nice house, he can do that.
Yeah, but
I guess I'm talking about nowadays.
Yeah,
because the systemic racism and the white privilege, that's been blown out of proportion again by propaganda. I'm talking about nowadays. I will not deny that like, this country failed miserably when it came to enslaving people. We failed miserably. Freedom, right? Like, after the Civil War, we failed miserably. By the way, if there's ever reparations, my family doesn't have to pay shit because I'm like 2 generations into this country.
Yeah,
like, none of my family were here when slavery and Jim Crow was around. So all those things happened, and yes, I do to this day, statistically speaking, do I think that Black people are at a disadvantage compared to white people? Yes. And that is a trickle effect of slavery, Jim Crow, and segregation. Yes, they're, statistically speaking, they were at an economic disadvantage. But to say that the system today is built to oppress Black people, that is fucking bullshit. It's bullshit.
I guess,
because give me a break. How many Black kids are, like, what about affirmative action? There are Black people out there going to colleges strictly to fill a quota because they need Black people in their school. Like,
true.
Is that equality?
Yeah, true.
So
true.
Like, nowadays,
I guess my question.
Equality,
no. Like you're saying, I guess my question, and I actually asked this question with people I work with, like, when we're talking, racist policies, and that term gets thrown out a lot. And I guess my question is, can I see one? Can I see one in action? What does that look like? What does that sound like? I mean, I've been reading this book about being anti-racist, and the question that I keep asking myself is, well, what specifically today, like you said, what can we point to that is racist? And I see a lot of, specifically in school, being a teacher, African American and Hispanic children, specifically boys, are at like a 3 or 4 times higher rate of getting expelled, suspended, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess my question is,
why is that?
Why is that, number A?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then B, think about
broken families.
Yeah, exactly. So let's think about the education system, right? So to me, I think in many ways, I think the education system is, I don't want to say oppressing is a strong word, but I feel like specifically communities, like one of the reasons why I didn't like Trump was because of his Secretary of Education, because she wanted to take charter schools and she was pretty much anti-public school. And my thing behind that is, like, when you talk about charter schools, a lot of them are better than public schools. But what that does is that takes funding out of public schools and puts that into charter schools. Now, what I mean by,
I don't agree with that at all.
What I mean by like oppression is when you think about like inner cities, and even like, I bet you guys can point to this in Miami. Think about the public schools probably in Miami. Like, Mark, you went to a private school.
I went to public school my whole life up until high school.
So which was better though? Think about it. Like, honestly,
private school was a breeze.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting bullied. I wasn't fighting as much. Like, it was a breeze.
Oh, you got bullied?
I got bullied so often, dude.
Talk about that.
But so the way they did it in Miami, though, so I went to the middle school that I went to in Miami, Southwood Middle School, was an A+ middle school. Now, the way I think they did things different in Miami when it came to, like, you know how they map out like school territories and like, if you live in this neighborhood, you're going to this school. In Miami, my school, there was kids from different types of neighborhoods. So you got a good mixture. You had the really rich Jewish kids going to my school. You had the middle class kids like me. You had kids from Richmond Heights, which was kind of like a poor area. So like, if you do it that way, and they had the buses drive to farther neighborhoods to bring these kids to school. So if you do it that way, where you bring a mixture of kids, and honestly, middle school did a lot for me because I saw a lot of different things, a lot of different cultures. You know, people raised differently.
That's I'll put that under one of the advantages of Miami. Like, growing up,
it's a melting pot of cultures.
I had no idea what like racist was. Like, I had no idea what oh, you're black. Like, it wasn't like that at all. Like, that's why a lot of Hispanic friends, like a lot of our friends, use the N-word with black people, and there's no issues because we were just all in a giant melting pot. And it wasn't until I got up here and obviously like watching the news and learning about stuff that I'm like, oh, like the rest of the country isn't that way. So that was one of the cool things. It was kind of like someone has to write a book or do some research about just down there, because it was never, I never remember having as many.
I never saw racism.
Yeah, we never had a discussion
now
growing up at all about like, oh, he's different than you are. Like,
I think a part of that though, for sure, my family was a huge influence. But I remember in elementary school learning about how we absolutely destroyed the Indian race, how we enslaved black people. Like, I learned all of that. They didn't sugarcoat anything in my public school.
They low key played it like they didn't really. I didn't understand 15 million Indians were slaughtered by us like until much later. I didn't really realize what the Civil War was about till much later. It was like, oh, it's just a disagreement about state rights. Oh, that's it.
Well, it's interesting because growing up in Pennsylvania, so specifically Greensburg, Salem, you had, and you call it like, you had the rich, suburban kids. I was middle class, and then you had, kind of the mix of Greensburg kids. But then they brought in kids from Delmont and Slickville.
Dog, let me just say.
Oh my God,
Nick, let me just say one thing. I tell people all the time: if you live in Pittsburgh, you're in Pittsburgh. If you're living out east, you're an Philly guy. But in the middle of Pennsylvania, somehow they managed to find Alabama. I've never seen so many Confederate flags, backpacks, wallets. 2 of my students had tattoos, and I'm like, "What's that for?" "I got Southern pride." I'm like, "Where's your family from?" Apollo. I'm like, "What?"
Apollo, yep.
Like none of these kids have traveled 10
Like,
miles.
black people were fleeing here, right?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like none of these kids have ever left Indiana County or
No, dude,
Armstrong
it's
County,
awful.
and
Awful.
it's like they've got this weird, but they're like, "Oh, no race. I like their music." I'm like, "Oh, that's exactly what non-racist people say." Like, it's just awful sometimes, and
Well, to be
obviously
honest,
these kids didn't wake up and just.
well, I was just gonna say, to be
It comes
honest,
from.
we were talking about, social media and things like that. And one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of do a little platform like this, and Joe Rogan does it too, but like the kids, I see the kids, they need to hear stories of like, oh, Miami, and from you guys who had that experience where it's like, oh, shit wasn't really different down there. Where up in Western PA, you had a lot of black. I mean, I didn't meet a Hispanic person until St. Vincent, to be honest with you. And so, we had a lot of black and white kids, but then you had these hillbilly white kids that would put Confederate flags on their truck and come to school. I mean, when I was in 8th grade, we had the biggest race war I've ever been a part of. And it was just black and white kids. And I always
had
fell
a
in the
race
middle.
War?
Dude, I'm not even kidding you. Jose,
what type of shit is going on in Western Pennsylvania?
Dude, I'm not even. I mean, when I say war, we just fought at like the mall
Like
and shit like that.
Oh,
yeah,
shit.
but dude, it was awful. And I was always in the middle because I was kind of friends with the hillbilly kids, but I was also friends with all the black kids because we played football, we played basketball. It was, when I tell you, the craziest thing I've ever seen. I can't even put it into words because, like, and honestly, that's one of the reasons why I became a teacher, because I was like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
That's failing. That's failing.
It was awful.
But can I make one more? Let me make one comment about the systemic racism thing, right? Because I don't want to come off. I don't want to come off insensitive. Again, I don't deny that, statistically speaking, black people are at a disadvantage. Again, that's because white people enslaved them for 400 years, where they had nothing. They didn't have freedom. They didn't have money, and then you gave them freedom, and then segregation and Jim Crow, and even to this day, black people aren't treated, in some cases equally, right? So like, I'm not denying all of that. I'm not denying that we have so much further to go. We do as a country. We don't treat people with equality, whether you're straight, gay. If you want to identify as a woman too, that's fine too.
Yeah.
But to say
this shit was going on
the
the
system,
60s, man.
Yeah, but I'm talking about right now, right? To say that's
like
the
all
system,
our grandparents were at live when they're like, man, water tastes better when it's coming from 2 different water fountains. Like, this is back then. Like, our grandparents were alive when like black people couldn't ride.
I guess that's my argument too, is that like, it's not that far. I guess that's my only thing though, is like, it's not that far removed.
Yeah, but the narrative is that it is right now, and it's not.
It's not. And I mean,
it's not.
But I think part of the fallout of it is, like I said, look at our history books. Like, they just kind of play it off like, oh, we just woke up one day. We're not racist anymore. Look at the way the Civil War was covered. Like,
well, I mean, it's called moving forward, Jose. I mean,
but we didn't really talk about what happened, I think. And that's why I'm explaining to you why there's such anger.
I did in my school.
I know that. I know, but I'm just letting you know that's why not everybody got top tier private school education, Mark. A lot of these inner city kids don't know that. So you gotta bear with me here. I think a lot of it wasn't addressed. Like, to me, it wasn't addressed. Like, I was getting older. I'm like,
I learned that at a public school. I learned that at a public school.
But guess what? I'm telling you right now, Nick's in the school as well. I'm telling you what these kids know, and they're not being taught shit properly, and it bothers me. That's why.
But I learned a lot from my parents too.
Okay, but I'm telling you, I got Billy Bob walking around with a Confederate flag, and the kids from New York. Like, I'm telling you that people's parents, and it's not no one's fault. It's just, we as a society, this goes hundreds of years back, we didn't address it the best way. And I think it takes adults like ourselves to make sure we continue to educate people the right way. I mean, I'm not kidding you. The last year, it's been like a civics class in my classes, because like, it's just disgusting that, and they're learning this from home. They're learning this from whatever far right, far left media they're watching. It's just like, There's not a problem, and it's important that we get our heads out of our ass and kind of agree to things, because if we keep thinking that.
I agree with all that. My thing, again, the main point I had with systemic racism, it is no longer a thing right now.
No, it's no longer a thing, but
it's not a thing anymore. Neither is white privilege
I
either.
learned this in theory class in criminal law studies here. When like a cop does something stupid, they've done research. It takes an entire of our parents that are at the age of, like, my dad was born. He was probably 10 years old when he maybe saw racist shit going on in society. Like it's not that far ago that we did it. Do I think it's going on right now? No, because I don't know a single cop, detective, lawyer who will watch the George Floyd thing and say this was racist. Like, that wasn't really racist. It was just a bad cop, but they all agree that there is racism. And like, I don't know a single person in law enforcement that is racist and would be okay with it. So I agree with you, Mark. I agree. Like, that's not the general, attitude with things, but I think that where's this bullshit coming from? Like, think about that for a second.
Yeah, it trickled down from systemic racism.
It's exactly what it did.
Sure.
It trickled down.